Welcome to Toyota Time with Timmy the Toolman and Sean. What we have for you today is another modification to a third generation Toyota 4Runner. We're going to show you how you go about getting rock rails, also known as sliders, onto your rig. The biggest part of this is choosing a good welder. Either go by word of mouth, somebody you know has used a welder and you know his work is good, or you go on Yelp and you find out the welder gets good reviews. What you don't want to do is go to your buddy who just finished one class of welding at a local community college and says, "Hey bro, I can do it for you." I wouldn't suggest that. Get yourself a good welder with a lot of experience to do this for you, because you don't want it to look sloppy. You don't want his welds to be weak, because these rock rails are going to be protecting your body as you're four-wheeling. So you wouldn't want them breaking off due to cheap welds. That's my best advice, is choose a good welder. Don't let your friend do it for you that has very little experience. And same with you. Don't get done with your first class at a community college and think you're going to take on a project like this. Wait till you get much better if you're going to be welding on your own rig. Practice on your buddy's rig. How about that? So the only real prep work we have to do is, if you have the factory steps on your 4Runner, you got to pull those off before you drive to the welder shop. Or you can drive there and you remove the steps right at the shop. It's up to you. I'm going to take them off at my house first and then be ready to go when I get to the welder shop, so we're not wasting any time taking off the steps. All right, since I'm choosing to remove my side steps before I go visit the welder, let me show you how to get that done. To start off, I'm going to show you where all the fasteners are. I'm on the passenger side. I'll start from the front and go back and show you all the fasteners you need to remove. Okay, here's the passenger side front tire. I'm going up. There's the body mount right there. And then here's the first bracket. There's a nut and a bolt I have to remove. Going backwards, right in front of this next body mount forward, I have another two bolts to remove, here and here. Going backward even more, the last bracket is right in front of the rear tire. There's another two bolts. So it looks like 5 bolts and 1 nut to remove on each side, and the thing will be free. What's weird is these are actually 13 millimeter fasteners. You don't see too many 13 millimeter fasteners on these vehicles. So Toyota did something out of the ordinary. I'm just going to use my Milwaukee M12 cordless ratchet to remove these. I'm filming by myself, so it's not going to be so easy for me to show it, but I'm assuming you're able to turn a wrench and get these things off. The middle and rear fasteners are actually a bolt and nut combo. The bolt comes in through the rear and the nut goes on towards the front. So what I did is I got on the bolt head with a box end 13 millimeter, and then I broke it free with a 3/8 ratchet and a 13 millimeter socket, and then I used my M12 cordless ratchet to take it out the rest of the way. All right, both side steps are off the vehicle. Here's what it looks like with them removed. All right, I'm off to the welder shop. Something nice to bring is some flat black paint, so you can paint the frame when he gets done welding, or you just do it whenever you get around to it. It's up to you. I'm at the welding shop and taking a look at the sliders after unpackaging them. You can see a difference in the way the 3 mounts are mounted. Right here, there's more of a gap between the cross member and the end as opposed to the other side. There's less distance here. So we figured it out that the shorter side goes towards the front and the longer side goes to the rear. The next thing we did is we held up the slider to the frame rail in about the position it's going to be in, and we marked the frame rail with white paint everywhere one of the brackets was going to be welded on, so we know where we need to do the grinding to get the paint off to prep for the welding. So one in the front, one in the middle, and then finally mark the rear mount. We put the rock rail onto the frame with some clamps, and we brought the truck out into the light to take a better look at it. And we think now the way it's sitting is going to be about perfect. So now we're going to weld it on. You could see how close it's coming to the front here. And then how close it's coming to the rear fender flare here. In preparation to weld on the driver's side frame rail, I would remove this plastic cover that basically goes right underneath the area of the fuel filter, because the welding is going to get the metal hot, and who knows, maybe it might melt a little bit. So I just removed this sucker off. It's just held by a bunch of 12mm fasteners and one plastic clip. So those are the fasteners that I took off, 3 12mm bolts and a plastic clip. Now that we have the slider in the position we want, Wes is going to tack it to the frame, and then we're going to fit the other side and make sure they're both looking equal, and then finish the welding. We have both sides tacked, and now we're going to weld them to the frame completely. So here's how the welds turned out. I'm starting on the passenger side, and this is the mount that's closest to the front tire. So this is the forwardmost mount. Here's the other side of that forwardmost mount. You could see the back side of the front foot came right over an existing hole in the frame. Going backwards, this is the forward side of the middle foot. This is the back side of the middle foot, and this middle foot didn't end up going over any existing holes in the frame. Going backwards to the rear mount, this is the front side of it, and this is the rear side of it. You'll notice that this rear mount also ends up going over an existing hole in the frame. Now that I've showed you where the feet of the mounts of the rock rails ended up on the frame rails, you might be wondering, Timmy the Toolman, are you guys sure that you got the rock rails in the proper orientation? And the answer is yes, we are absolutely sure, because Wes and I tried them in the other orientation and it didn't work because the middle foot was hitting one of the body mount brackets on the frame. It wasn't going to line up square between the front and rear tires. To further prove what I'm telling you is the truth, that it wouldn't work the other way around, I'm going to share some measurements with you, and you'll see where the feet would have ended up if we tried to put the rock rails in the other orientation. I'm on the passenger side again. I have the tape measure at the end of the rock rail right behind the front tire. Going backwards, the first support member is 7.5 inches on center from the front. Going further back to the middle mount, the center support is 29 inches on center, and now we're going to go back to the rear mount. The rear mount is 52.5 inches on center. So now let's take these measurements and see if they would have worked if we got the rock rails on in the opposite orientation. We're now on the driver's side, and we're starting our measurement from the back moving forward. This is the left rear tire. 7.5 inches would put the first mount right about there, right near this rear body mount in front of the rear tire. So now let's go forward and see where the next mount would be at 29 inches. So now we're at 29 inches, and if I travel back towards the frame, you can see that the mount on center would be right up against the body mount. The feet for the rock rails are 3 inches wide. So you could see that if you went 1.5 inches backwards, you would be right into here. So it doesn't work. You would have to move the rock rail 1.5 inches forward in order for it to work in this orientation. And now let me show you where the next mount would end up. So now we're at 52.5, and let me travel back to the frame and show you where that one would end up. This would actually end up on a part of the frame where there's no existing holes, which is nice. But now let's go to the very end of the rock rail and see how much room is between the rock rail and the fender flare. And you'll see that it really wouldn't work to do it in this orientation because we'd have to move the whole rock rail about 1.5 inches forward. If you look at how close the end of the front of the rock rail is to the front fender flare, we only got about 1/2 inch. If we would have moved it more forward, we would have had the rock rail contacting the fender flare instead of where it currently is, nicely centered between the front and rear fender flare. You'll notice that Wes welded both the front and rear sides of the feet of the rock rails. He didn't weld the bottoms and he didn't weld the tops. Wes's initial intention was to weld all sides of the feet. When he got to the top part of the foot, he realized the foot was built so tall that he couldn't get his welder in here to weld it. The top of the foot extends past the top of the frame rail. I made a call to CBI and I talked with Kenny, and he says that when they build the rock rails, it's kind of a one size fits all for the feet. They use this style foot for many different applications, many different vehicles. He also said that they usually don't recommend people weld the tops and bottoms because if the weld isn't perfect and it has a pinhole, if water is able to get in to that pinhole, then it's going to get trapped behind the foot and then you're going to have some corrosion issues. So what they actually recommend is just to weld the sides and don't weld the tops and the bottoms. However, I have seen many friends' vehicles with rock rails and their rock rail feet are welded on all sides. If you had a good welder and his welds were solid with no pinholes, then I think you could absolutely have all sides welded without any problems. With the way CBI designed these feet being bigger than the actual length of the frame rail, we don't have that option. But here's the other problem that I see. In regards to getting moisture behind these feet and having a corrosion issue, we have all these holes in the frame rail. And I was analyzing it, and I don't even know if CBI was able to redesign them. Could they find 3 spots on the frame distributing the load of the rock rail evenly and not end up having one of the feet over one of these holes? So in a situation like this where the weld ended up going partially over a hole, even if I was able to weld the top and the bottom, if I went into a deep enough creek crossing or maybe just moisture from rain was able to get into the hole of the frame and get behind this foot, I would have corrosion problems. So the only way I could see that you can weld all 4 sides is if the foot is welded onto a completely solid piece of the frame rail with no holes behind it. So to prevent any bad rust issues, we did keep the bottom unwelded and we didn't weld the top. And I also used a product called fluid film, and I sprayed some into the tops and bottoms of the hole to help protect the metal, because there is bare metal behind these mounts now because Wes cleaned off the paint in preparation to do the welding, so there's bare metal behind here. This is the product that I was talking about. It's really popular with people that live in the areas of the country where they salt the roads due to ice. So they spray this on the inside of their frames, on the outside, and on all the other various parts underneath the vehicle to help protect from rust. It's Godzilla approved. It's also Timmy approved. See, Timmy agrees. We are done with this rock rail, also known as rock slider install. Pretty straightforward. You got to remove your side steps and then choose a good welder to do the welding for you. There's many manufacturers of rock sliders. I just happened to choose CBI because I was already going to be buying their rear bumper and their front bumper, and then I bought their skid plates too, so I figured why not buy their rock rails. I wasn't necessarily super picky, and I figured one was just as good as the other. There's some different designs where some of them have the rear kickouts. It's all up to you what you want to buy. I think the CBI product is pretty good. I would like to see them actually make feet that fit the frame rails on the Toyota 4Runner specifically and not a one-size-fit-all. I also would be interested to see if they actually maybe take my advice and potentially try to redesign them to where the feet can be welded onto solid pieces of the frame, not with any existing holes. But like I said, I don't know with the proper distribution and support of the vehicle whether or not that's even possible, because there's quite a few holes down the sides of the frame rails on both the passenger and driver side. So I might be asking for something that's not really all that possible. I now have one more thing to make me look super cool driving through the mall parking lot. But in all seriousness, I do plan on wheeling this truck. This is not going to be a mall crawler. There is a chance I might actually smash those rock rails into a rock. With all that said, we thank you for watching Toyota Time with Timmy the Toolman and Sean. We will be back with more videos. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you have any questions or comments, do that below. Take care. Bye-bye. Peace out.